What if becoming who you were truly born to be starts the moment you stop protecting the version of you that keeps betraying you in silence? You call it confusion, overthinking, lack of discipline. But in Sufism, Fana points to something deeper, the self-made identity that reacts, panics, and then traps you in the same mistake again. And this is already happening inside you right now. The more you fight to control everything, the more you feed the very self that keeps you lost. And that is why resistance is not saving you. It is repeating you. There is a pattern already swallowing your life, but once you see it clearly, you stop performing and start dissolving what is false. If you keep going, you will discover how to become who you were truly born to be. Fana does not begin when your life becomes peaceful. It begins when you finally notice how much of your personality is just defense wearing a human face. You smile to be accepted, you explain yourself to be forgiven, you stay busy so you do not have to feel the emptiness underneath. And then you wonder why you still feel far from who you were born to be. This is the first step of Fana in Sufism. You stop calling your mask me. You see the false self as a pattern, not an identity. The moment you see that clearly, something inside you starts loosening. The second step is harder, because now you must interrupt the reaction before it becomes your next mistake. A thought appears, then a sensation rises in your chest, then you rush to fix, defend, impress, escape. That speed is the prison. Fana asks you to stay there for one breath longer than your habit wants, not to punish yourself, not to become passive, but to watch the nafs, the ego self, expose its hunger in real time. You were not born to obey every fear that speaks in your voice. You were born to recognize which voice is false before it becomes your whole day. The third step is surrender, and this is where most people run away, because surrender sounds weak to a mind addicted to control. But in the Sufi path, surrender is not collapsing. It is refusing to worship the frightened version of yourself anymore. Rumi points again and again toward the burning away of what is false, so that something more real can live through you. That means you stop asking, how do I protect this image? And start asking, what in me needs to die so I can become who I was born to be? That question changes everything, because now Fana is no longer an idea. It becomes a living fire inside your decisions. And the fourth step is embodiment, because if Fana stays only in your thoughts, the old self will return wearing spiritual language. So you tell the truth where you used to perform. You stay present where you used to disappear. You choose silence where you used to manipulate the moment with explanations. Step by step, Fana strips away the version of you built from fear, and what remains is not emptiness, but clarity, not passivity, but alignment, not a perfect self, but a real one. And that is how you start becoming who you were truly born to be, not by adding more identity, but by removing everything in you that was never true. Step 9 is where the Fana technique turns against your last illusion, the belief that you are almost there. That quiet pride, that subtle identity of being someone who is evolving, aware, different, that is just a more sophisticated mask. You start noticing how even your healing became performance. You catch yourself wanting to be seen as someone deep, someone conscious, someone who understands Rumi, who lives Sufism, who is becoming who they were born to be. And right there, Fana cuts again, because anything you can use to feel superior is still part of the false self. This step is brutal in its honesty. You are not here to become special. You are here to become real, and reality does not need decoration. Step 10 is silence, but not the kind you use to avoid conflict or hide discomfort. This is the silence where the inner noise loses authority. The thoughts still come, the impulses still rise, but they stop deciding who you are. In Sufi practice, this is where remembrance, dhikr, begins to replace obsession, not as repetition of words only, but as a returning to presence again and again until your center stops being occupied by fear. You begin to notice that you are not every thought you hear, not every emotion you feel, not every urge that pulls you. And in that space, something stable appears. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. This is where becoming who you were born to be stops being a chase and starts being a quiet recognition. Step 11 is where your relationships expose whether Fana is real in you or just another idea. Because it is easy to feel aligned alone. It is easy to feel clear in silence. But when someone challenges you, misunderstands you, rejects you, or does not give you what you expected, the old self comes back fast. The need to defend, to prove, to withdraw, to control. This is the imchan, the test spoken of across Sufi teachings. Not to judge you, but to reveal you. Every interaction becomes a mirror. Are you still protecting an image, or are you willing to stay true without becoming hard? This is where many people retreat, because they realize Fana is not a concept. It is a continuous dying in the middle of real life. Step 12 is the collapse of control as identity. Not that you stop acting, deciding, building your life, but you stop needing to dominate every outcome to feel safe. You let go of the idea that you must manage how everything unfolds in order to be okay. And this is terrifying at first, because the false self survives on control. But slowly, something else replaces that tension. Trust, not blind belief, not passivity, but a grounded acceptance that you can respond without needing to control everything. In Sufi language, this aligns with tawakkul, a deep reliance that emerges when the ego loosens its grip. And in that state, your actions become cleaner, your decisions less reactive, your life less forced. You begin to move with reality instead of constantly fighting it. Step 13 is where you finally understand becoming who you were born to be was never about adding anything. It was always about removing what was never true. The roles, the defenses, the rehearsed personalities, the inherited fears. One by one, they fall, not because you attacked them, but because you stopped feeding them. And what remains is not a perfect version of you, not an enlightened identity you can show the world, but something far more unsettling and freeing at the same time, a self that does not need to pretend anymore. This is the quiet essence that Rumi points toward, not a new mask, but the absence of all masks. And from there, your life stops being a performance and starts being an expression. If nothing false could remain in you, what part of your current identity would disappear first? And are you truly ready to become who you were born to be, even if it costs every version of you that feels familiar? What are you still protecting that is already suffocating the person you were born to become? And if Fana began for you today, which false version of you would have to disappear first? Step 5 is where the Fana technique stops being beautiful and starts being honest. You catch the false self before it gets to perform. Not after the argument, not after the people-pleasing, not after the cold silence, the fake strength, the needy message, the sudden retreat. Before. You feel the movement in your body first, the tightening, the rush, the urge to become someone fast so you do not have to feel exposed. In Sufi language, that lower reactive self is often described through the struggle with the nafs, and the work is not cosmetic. It is the breaking of pride, compulsion, and self-will before they become your behavior. That means your real transformation begins in the split second where nobody applauds you, because nobody can even see what you just refused to become. Step 6 is harder, because now you must face the secret reward of your suffering. Every false identity pays you something. The victim self pays you with innocence. The superior self pays you with distance. The wounded self pays you with control. The invisible self pays you with excuses. And as long as one version of you keeps getting fed, you will keep calling your prison personality. Fana is merciless here. It asks you to look at the pattern and admit, without poetry, what it has been giving you. Because the lie does not survive exposure. The moment you stop romanticizing your pain, you begin starving the self that was built to survive, but not to tell the truth. That is when becoming who you were truly born to be stops sounding inspirational and starts becoming expensive. Step 7 is surrendering the center of your life. Not your intelligence, not your dignity, the center. Because the false self always wants to remain the one making final decisions. It wants spirituality without death, healing without humiliation, truth without loss. But the inner logic of Fana is the opposite. What is false passes away so something real can remain, and classical Sufi teaching pairs that passing away with Baqa, a different kind of abiding that comes after the ego loses its throne. This is why resisting the process keeps you divided. You cannot become who you were born to be while kneeling to the version of you that only knows fear, image, and control. In the deepest sense, you are not losing yourself here. You are losing what has been standing in the place of your soul. Step 8 is the proof. You bring this into ordinary life until your daily choices stop betraying your deepest knowing. You answer slower. You confess faster. You stop decorating your emptiness with achievement. You stop calling distraction rest. You stop turning every wound into an identity. And little by little, the person you have been performing begins to collapse from lack of worship. This is why the old Sufi teaching about dying before you die still cuts so deep. It is not asking for your destruction, but for the end of everything in you that keeps refusing reality. When that false center softens, love gets cleaner, speech gets truer, and your life stops feeling like a costume you forgot how to take off. So this is the real step-by-step of Fana if you want to become who you were truly born to be. See the mask, interrupt the reaction, expose the reward, surrender the center, and repeat until what is counterfeit can no longer rule you. That is why this path feels like loss before it feels like freedom. You are not merely improving habits, you are watching a false ruler die. And when that ruler starts collapsing, you do not become empty in the way you feared. You become clear, you become clean. You become available to a life that no longer has to be built on performance. That is the threshold Rumi's world keeps pointing toward, not a louder identity, but a truer existence that can finally breathe. Which version of you still takes control the moment you feel rejected, unseen, or afraid? And if your false self stopped running your life today, what truth would finally have room to live?